Welcome to Vision Chat, a podcast about spiritual topics, with your hosts, Virginia and Stina.
Welcome back to Vision Chat. Today, Virginia and I are interviewing Andrew Fritz, who is one of the owner of Denver Psychic School, where they offer classes, different courses, and he has broad knowledge about the spiritual realm and meditation. He has been teaching for years and has his own podcast with Heather Fritz, who is his wife and partner. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to start off just talking a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. Yes, I mean, my journey, I grew up on the East Coast, the United States, just outside of Philadelphia. Kind of an unusual upbringing. I kind of grew up a quarter mile back in the woods, kind of this very old house. I think parts of it were kind of built in the mid 1700s. So my childhood was a little strange because some of my early spiritual experiences revolved around, ghostly encounters or just, haunted type experiences. Those are my first kind of initial spiritual experiences. We can kind of get into that a little bit later. But I didn't really grow up spiritual or religious. And it took a couple of years until I kind of left my hometown, where I went to art school in Chicago. And that's where kind of my spiritual journey began, kind of just meeting my roommate. He's the one that introduced me to kind of energy work, psychic work, and we ended up at this school. And that's where I got my first R reading and where I started to take kind of numerous classes. And it just kind of unfolded from there. I would say ever since 2007, off and on, I've been teaching, doing readings, healings, and kind of got a little more serious with it in kind of 2020 than the pandemic hit. So yeah, just a lot of teaching lately.
What would you call yourself? Like, do you have certain labels that you're comfortable with, like empath, clairvoyant, psychic?
I would say the biggest, like in the past, probably clairvoyant, healer. Lately, kind of more just like teacher is the one that I kind of resonate with the most. So,
What do you like about being a teacher?
I think the thing with teaching is that, most people kind of think that, they know everything and they're just kind of teaching all of that to other people. And to me, sure, you kind of, as a teacher, you kind of get to a point where you have a wealth of information and have the ability to guide other people. But I actually kind of look at it as the teacher's kind of like the bigger students. That's what I love about teaching, is that I learn so much. I think I've been learning more as a teacher than I was as a student. So one of my favorite things as a teacher is actually kind of geeking out and creating curriculum. Because in that process, that's where I learn the most, where I'm not looking outside of myself for information or answers. I take the moment to meditate and kind of turn within and kind of look at different questions and topics that I want to teach about. And I get a lot of information. And that's kind of my process as to getting information and using that to teach it to other people.
How, going along with the teaching, what do you find to be like the biggest reward? Which I think you're saying is your learning as well. But is there more like another deeper reward for you as a teacher? And then also on the flip side, what do you think is like the biggest challenge specifically with spirituality?
Yeah, I mean, a big reward is, there's going to be the components that are related to like myself as a teacher, the learning, the growth, the change, but also kind of observing and watching students go through their own kind of personal growth and change. And, there's going to be the trials and tribulations and challenging times, but watching them kind of go through that and come out of it and kind of see them have their epiphanies and kind of see them be able to kind of shift more towards spirit and kind of more towards their truth. So that's what I really enjoy watching kind of students do, kind of be in more pursuit of what they have an affinity with, their dreams, and kind of in alignment with their purpose. So that's really rewarding. And then what was the other part? Sorry.
Most challenging thing about teaching spirituality?
Yeah, I would say the growth periods. So anybody that's into spiritual growth knows that you kind of are going through growing pains, especially if you go through certain psychic trainings, you're going to kind of go through accelerated growth and change. Same thing kind of applies to as a teacher. You're going to be going through rapid growth and change. So you're going through your own personal stuff, and then you're kind of still handling kind of what's happening with every class or training that you're teaching. So it's a lot to kind of be aware of and kind of manage and toggle. So yeah, it can be very difficult to handle energetically, but I think it is very rewarding. That's the thing. I always reminding myself of the why, going back to that. I think that applies for students or just someone that's in kind of on their spiritual path, or even teachers, coming back to the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I going through this? And that kind of like brings you right back and go, oh yeah, I can clearly see like this is why I kind of set on the path to do this. It makes it all that, worth it.
We do love our growth periods, right, Stina?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you originally come across spirituality?
Yeah. So like I said, kind of going back to the beginning, I didn't grow up religious, not a religious household. I didn't grow up spiritual. Like maybe I was kind of dabbled into astrology, like read a book and, what's my sign, and, people that I was close to, what's their sign, and, how we kind of relate and connect with one another. I was into that a little bit. And then just, again, we grew up in a house where very old house, people, have died there and passed away there. And so a lot of my early experiences, as a child was hearing, footsteps kind of going across the room when no one was physically there. And it was just very clear hearing it. I remember one time where I was, again, everybody was asleep, upstairs. I was the only person downstairs, and I was on one side of the house, and I was playing this game, and I think I died in the game, and I'm just kind of waiting to respawn and come back. And so I'm just kind of there watching, and then I started to hear like two women laughing and giggling. And I was just like, wait a second, what's that? And it was one of those moments where you're like, I hear that, but I would really like to just kind of deny that I'm even aware of this, And it became more evident and more louder and more clear, kind of to the point where I was kind of just frozen in fear a little bit. And I was just like, whoa, okay. One of those moments where you want to run away, but you can't actually physically move. That was kind of my experience. And then moments later, I had this kind of rush behind me and kind of a loud growling sound in my ear, kind of off to the right side of me. And I kind of booked it up the stairs, up to where my parents were. So I had a lot of experience like that growing up. That's kind of where that started. But as far as, other examples, when I was a kid, I just kind of had this intuitive knowing that I needed to leave my hometown. I didn't know why or what I was going to do or where I was going to go, but I just knew that I needed to leave. And that was kind of my goal ever since I kind of became aware of that. And it was a kind of a struggle, actually, kind of leaving my hometown, but eventually I was able to, and that's when I kind of landed in Chicago for art school.
And when you've done readings or any other kind of energy work, have you ever freaked anybody out with your abilities?
Maybe myself. Yeah, I remember,
that counts.
Yeah. I was going through a clairvoyant training. Again, this is, I went to art school, and then I found myself at a psychic school in Chicago. I was going through this year-long clairvoyant training, and we do a lot of readings, like you're talking about, these reading sessions. And I'm reading a woman, and there might have been someone else, one or two other people in the room. And I'm doing an aura reading, kind of just there's 7 layers of the aura, and kind of reading each aspect of their life. And I'm in a particular layer, and I was seeing this image of this woman pole dancing. And I see the image, and I'm not saying anything or communicating it. I'm just going, all right, I see this. I see her pole dancing. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to say this, because it felt like, am I going to upset her by saying this? This has to be totally wrong. And I just decided to just go, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to just read what I'm seeing. And I'm like, okay, here, I see you in this picture. You're pole dancing. And we moved on. And at the very end of the reading, she says, hey, Yeah, I'm taking pole dancing classes. So yeah, I kind of surprised myself and maybe some people in the room with that. Yeah. So that was kind of funny.
That's awesome. And it's great that you had the courage to actually say it, because I think that's one of the biggest things that we struggle when we're providing readings for people is like, if you see something, you're like, I don't know if I should say that.
Right. And I can give you an example of like, that's a time when I decided to say it and everything worked out. And there's been on the other flip side is you see something and don't say it. And so there was a time where I was, I sat in meditation. I was about to have this reading with this woman, and I kept seeing this picture of this woman in a room where she was like holding a baby, like a newborn. I was like, why do I keep seeing this picture? And I kept blowing it up, letting it go, and ended up doing the reading. The reading's great. She understood it. And then at the very end, she's talking about, God, all I want is I just want love, and I just want to have a family. I want to start a family. And I go, yeah. That's why I kept seeing that picture. It was just one of those moments where I just was like, this ain't a big deal. I don't need to say, express what I'm seeing. So that's a kind of an example of when I said it versus when I didn't. So
how do you decide in that split second? Because that's one thing that I think I struggle with personally is like when you say it versus when you just don't. What do you think is like the biggest thing that keeps us from saying these things sometimes?
Yeah, I think sometimes we have the assumption that we need to know what we're looking at, what it means, and reminding ourselves that, wait a second, I'm reading this person. Most likely it's probably going to be a stranger, or maybe you don't know them entirely. And we just assume that we have to know what this means. And if we don't understand what this means, then something's wrong. Let me get this away from me and find something that kind of makes sense. So there might be a little bit of fear, maybe a little bit of doubt, and just kind of like, okay, well, what's the fear? What's the doubt? Move it out and just, okay, I'm just going to describe what I see. And majority of the time, you're going to surprise yourself or surprise that person. That's what I find.
Do you find it hard for yourself or your students to stay like neutral when reading?
Yeah. I'd say a lot of the time you're going to go in and out of neutrality. Yeah. And so like, neutrality, what is it? It's not about something being good or bad, right or wrong. It's just kind of being aware and seeing it as it is, kind of without judgment. I think there's some misconceptions around neutrality that you're kind of this like cold and kind of robotic, like it's as if it's a negative or bad thing. And actually, I find that neutrality is a quality of spirit. So I'd rather kind of be in neutrality, whether it's of the world or other people or even my own self, as opposed to being judged or judging my own self or whatever it might be. I think that the judgment actually I feel is much more harsh than someone just go, oh, I'll just let you be kind of as you are, whatever and how you are in that moment. But yeah, in a reading situation, going back to your question, yes, when you're giving a reading, you're probably going to be going in and out of neutrality all the time. And it's just a matter of just resetting yourself. And I think that's totally okay and totally normal. It's just that, especially, say, one thing in readings, past lives are a really fun topic. People, I want to read my past lives, or who was I? And, sometimes you'll see a lifetime where it's a very high life. And then sometimes you'll see a life where it's kind of a low life or, something traumatic happened. And so when you're reading that, you start to kind of notice the energy. It's going to be kind of intense. And you might kind of lose neutrality for a little bit and just kind of, let me kind of recenter myself. It's not that you're not feeling anything. It's just that you're not like becoming that feeling, whatever's popping up. That's all. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about lucid dreaming as well? I know that you have some courses and done it a lot. So
yeah, lucid dreaming's fun. I think it's a very euphoric thing to experience because it's no different than like becoming awake in this world, right? I think like because the moment, maybe I'll talk about that first, is like, when I went to art school, my roommate gave me a book called You Are the Answer by Tamura. And I started to read it I don't know what part of the book I hit, but that's when I kind of realized I was spirit. And like that was a huge moment for me of just waking up like, oh my God, what do you say? I'm not my physical body, like I'm this spiritual being, like that's really intense. So that was a really joyful, kind of liberating experience to just wake up to that. And that's one of my favorite things in life is the shedding of the unconsciousness and waking up, the epiphany. It's the same experience when you're dreaming. You're like when you're sleeping at night and waking up and having a kind of a lucid experience where previously you were just totally unconscious. And then suddenly, whoa, wait a second, you know, I'm still dreaming right now, but I know that I'm dreaming. And all different sorts of things can kind of happen. You know, one lucid dream experience I can kind of recall, I remember I was really like practicing at it, maybe for like 2.5 months. This is while I was traveling to the United States in an RV. And I was in this dream where I think I was on the top of a hill, like a really large hill. And I was kind of going up and down. And I remember one time where I was passing or going down the hill, I recognized there was something that changed. And, you know, I was like, oh, why, how did that change? Where before I saw it a certain way and now I'm passing it and it looks entirely different. What was that all about? It seemed like physically impossible. And I started to kind of wake up and go, oh, wait a second, this is just a dream. And I immediately was having these kind of this notion of, or just remain calm. Because once you usually wake up in a dream, you start to kind of get really excited. And when you get too excited in a dream, that's usually when you pop out. And then you'll wake up in your bed and go, oh my gosh, I messed it up. Yeah, I want to get back there. Yeah, and then just from there, it was kind of a fun experience, just kind of walking around this dream world and kind of looking at my dream hands. And yeah, then you can fly and do all sorts of things like that. But yeah, the fun part is just waking up, and then, you know, what can you do in that lucid dream? You're not really beholden to whatever's going on in it. You're kind of free, and that's the fun part. Same thing in this world is once you kind of wake up, you have a sense of freedom or liberation.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that? Like in the real waking world, like how does waking up spiritually free you?
Yeah. So I mean, it's, you know, when you get into the spiritual path and you start to question, you know, why do we suffer? Why do we go through suffering? And when I look at that psychically or in meditation, it's the first thing I see is just unconsciousness, just lack of awareness of what? Spirit, not being aware of your higher self, and going beyond that, not being aware of source, whatever that means to you or however you perceive that. And that you have these mental barriers or images in your mind or illusions between you and your higher self, and between you and source. So I think that's kind of some of the root around suffering. So the more you can kind of wake up to an image in your mind that's an illusion and go boom and let it go, then you're one step closer to kind of liberation or freeing yourself. So that's what I mean by that. You just get closer and closer to your, whatever it is your own truth is. You're just getting closer and closer to spirit. So that's what I mean by that. You know, anytime, it's no different, again, like with lucid dreaming, when you wake up in the dream world and go, oh, I'm this is a dream, and, you know, I could stay in this dream or I could dissolve it and then wake up physically and, you know, in the bed or whatever. When you dream at night, you know, your body's laying down, but then you kind of are a little bit out of the body. And what I note, and usually it's kind of the vehicle of consciousness that you're in is that astral body. That's the kind of the energy body that's associated with dreaming. And I'll usually see this kind of little image appear in front of that astral body face. And that person's kind of in their own little dream world. And so when they're lucid, they're still out of the body, but they're in their dream state, aware that they're dreaming. And then you can go ahead and go, I'll stay in this or I'll end this. And they just kind of end up dissolving this image, this dream world that they're in, so to speak. And it's kind of the same thing when you're in meditation, becoming aware of an illusion. Oh, this is just something I was caught in that I thought was true, but it's really not. And I can end it, dissolve it. And now I'm more aware. I'm more aware of spirit to some degree. And that's kind of the path that we're on, is working through all these.
Yes, that's a beautiful explanation. I guess I was thinking like if I was a person that was just entertaining spirituality for the first time, and I was like trying to understand all these, different avenues for following your spiritual path, like, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing people talking about awakening and awakening, and what does that
Mm-hmm.
mean, right? How do you explain that to someone? Like, what does it mean to be awakened in a real life like scenario? Does it mean that once you're in touch with your higher self, or that at the I guess the core belief is that we are spirit and connected to a source or a higher being?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so most people kind of walk around believing like they're the body, they're the physical body. So if you think you're the body and everybody knows that there's an expiration date for the physical body, then there's just a great deal of fear about, oh no, like I know this body's going to die, therefore I'm going to die and then I'll cease to exist. So that's what a lot of people are waking up to is, oh, I'm not this physical body. And everybody has that experience. It's a different experience for everyone. For me, it was just reading a book and then, oh yeah, now I remember that I'm spirit. Some people, it's a near-death experience, where something happens and then they're kind of in this, out of body states, and they're starting to wake up that, oh, wait a second, I'm not this physical body. Some people have it that way. Some people it's through a meditation or whatever it is. It can happen different ways for different people. So I think that's the big part, is just waking up. Oh my gosh, I'm not even my physical body. And that's kind of the beginning of it.
And I guess that impacts maybe the jobs we take or don't take, the school we go to or don't go to, like decisions that we make in life.
Yeah, that's the challenge after that, because once you realize, oh, wait a second, I'm not my physical body, I'm spirit. Spirit is eternal, timeless. Uh, I don't die, but my body's going to die. And then so some people might go, oh, well, who cares about this place? If I don't really, this, I'm not this body, I can just, jump off a cliff and, whoop, let me get out of this place, because this place is, I don't know about this place. It's kind of tricky and difficult, and I don't like it sometimes, and let me get out of here. So it's not that, it's just kind of waking up, yes, and then going, okay, what am I doing here? What's the point? What's the why? What's my purpose? And getting in touch with that. I think it's really challenging once you wake up and realize your spirit is still remaining grounded here, having a sense of neutrality also, but also getting in touch with, hey, what is my purpose? Before you even decided to set this life up spiritually, you're kind of going back and looking at, why did I do that? Why did I choose my parents? What was my mission statement for this life? What did I come to do here, to accomplish, to experience? Everything you're doing here is just, you're playing different games to have different experiences, so that you're contributing. Each experience is going to be a building block to wisdom. That's essentially what you're doing. Lifetime after lifetime, you're waking up more and more, and that you're kind of, through all these different experiences, little by little, acquiring more wisdom. So you get to the point where you go, I know enough about myself, about whatever you perceive God or source to be, your divine heritage, and you go, okay, I don't have to continue playing this video game.
Why do you think we want to do it in the first place? You said a little bit about wisdom, but what do you think is the end goal?
The end goal of
having like different types of life down on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're done, what do you think is the end goal?
Yeah, so then it comes down to like a question about purpose, right? So when I look at purpose, there's two different levels of it. And some people might agree or disagree with me on this. On kind of the first level of purpose, I look at it as we each have like a unique individual purpose for this lifetime. So my purpose for this lifetime might be different to your, Stina, and you, Virginia, and everyone else out there in the world that has bodies. So it's their mock-up. It's their kind of the mission, the why they chose to incarnate, what this lifetime is generally all about. Then the kind of the second or higher level of purpose, I tend to find, is kind of very similar for everyone here. And that first level purpose, each individual lifetime is contributing little by little to that higher level purpose. And when I look at the higher level purpose for all of us, again, it's kind of lifetime after lifetime, we're building kind of a wisdom body. So every time, each lifetime, we build it little by little. And to the point where you get to a point where it's fully finished. And I look at it, it could be looking very similar to a physical body, but it's just it's a light body, an energy body. And every fragment, every little speck, pixel of energy of that particular wisdom body or divine body is just fragments of wisdom that you've obtained or acquired lifetime after lifetime. And then when you've completed that wisdom body, that's when you go, oh, I fully have realized myself, God, I know myself, and I know where I came from. It's you kind of, it's one thing to wake up, oh, I'm not this physical body, I'm this spiritual being. And oh my gosh, I may have had many past lives on this planet, maybe other different planets also. And then starting to go even further and waking up to, where did your journey as a soul really begin? And kind of waking up to that and kind of starting to realize that, oh, I'm not much different than this thing we call source, the qualities of source, and you start to see it in yourself and everyone. So you're kind of waking up to where your journey started. And then you have your freedom. You can come back here if you want or not. And so some people might go, why would I ever want to come back here if I'm free? So you might not. You might go somewhere else. You may come back here. You may just kind of be in spirit. You have your power, your creativity, your freedom. It's limitless.
I often ask myself, why am I here? Why do I keep doing this? And yet here I am. Time after time. Well, for people that don't know and are listening, Andrew, you were my teacher and Stina's teacher for a couple years, and we learned so much from you. And you took us on some pretty incredible journeys, spiritual field trips. So is there any way you can talk a little bit about like those classes that you teach? I don't know if you're still teaching them or not, but for people interested in like deepening their knowledge of spirituality, like, is there any amazing, I don't know, experience that you've had while going on some of these journeys, either yourself personally or when you're teaching?
Yeah. I mean, so like I usually start with like a basic meditation series, and even though I call it like basic, that's like probably the most important tools that I've learned, or that the students might learn. Just starting off with things like just grounding, your connection, your relationship with the earth. So you just learn some basic tools that are very powerful, though. Yeah, I mean, I've had many different types of experiences, like as a student and also teaching, or, one kind of that pops up in my mind. I remember teaching both of you the inner dimensions training. And that was a really kind of fun training, kind of this, like you said, spiritual field trips where you're kind of stepping out of the body and exploring kind of the different dimensions of this particular universe, with the focus on those inner dimensions, the higher levels. And you can have these experiences like you did kind of in a deeper meditative state. But yeah, there's even times where I remember being just walking on the sidewalk. I was at my job. I think this was in Utah. And I'm just walking, and so my physical body's walking, but then I start to become aware of the space that's kind of very near I would call it the center of, our universe, kind of where one might find that sense of source. And I started to become much more aware of that space. And so that was like a really unique experience, just going, oh, wait, I wasn't in necessarily a deep meditative state, but I'm just going for a walk, so you can have these experiences when quote unquote you sense or perceive yourself out of meditation, just kind of in your day to day. And that's what I love about teaching this stuff, is that, we'll first learn it in kind of a close your eyes and kind of center yourself and learn it there. But then how do you take that kind of in your everyday life? That's the trick. And you can definitely do that. So learning to kind of stay grounded throughout your day to day, whether you're going to the grocery store or you're at your job or whatever it is, learning to forgive. That's a huge thing. That's one thing that's taught in the basic meditation series. How do you kind of find the energy of forgiveness? And Yeah, forgive other people, but really the big thing is about forgiving yourself. Sometimes we can kind of be hard on ourselves. And so just learning to forgive yourself. And that can be just in your day-to-day, especially relationships. That's where your relationship to yourself, relationship to other people, and just learning to just, okay, I'm not perfect and this thing happened, and let me just find a moment to just forgive myself and let go of, whatever I'm holding on in relation to it. So I think that's the fun part of it is learning to carry it in your everyday life.
Do you have some fun examples how you can use like the spiritual tools?
Yeah, I mean, so, I'm always using it in regards to teaching, whether, prepping for a class or when I'm working on new curriculum, that's always fun. I do the same thing when I was going to my trainings as a student in Chicago, as I do now. I live in Denver. Anytime I'm walking down the streets, sometimes I'll see someone walking up ahead of me, coming towards me. And sometimes I have a sense that I just need to create kind of use a certain tool or technique to provide a certain boundary, kind of a protection, if you will. I'll just have a knowing, and I won't know why or anything that. I'll just go, all right, I trust that I'm getting this information. I just need to create this kind of energetic protection for myself, and I'll just do that in the moment. So I did that as a student going to my classes or just walking kind of in the streets of Chicago, and I do the same thing now kind of walking in the city here in Denver. When I'm at my day job, if I have some downtime or things aren't busy, I'll just kind of sit there and not that I'm in a deep meditation, but I'll start to use my clairvoyance and just start to read myself just for fun. So if things are getting a little boring, then I'm just going to sit here and start reading myself, or I'm just going to start kind of I'll have certain questions in mind and I'll just kind of look at those clairvoyantly. So that's how I use that kind of in my day to day.
I remember you saying you used to use it to find a good parking spot.
Yes. Yeah, you could do. Yeah, that's working with spirit guides. That's also a fun one. Yeah, there'd be certain times, God, when so I'd go hiking and I'd park my car and I'd be kind of uncertain of, am I gonna get towed? Am I gonna get ticketed? Or, when my car would get hit. And so I'd use certain techniques in that situation. I might kind of ground the vehicle. I might set up kind of a protection, just like I mentioned before, but for the actual vehicle. And then I'll kind of speak with my spirit guides and just say, hey, can you kind of just hang out around here and just kind of watch it for me? What was that? There was one time, so I was living in Colorado up in the mountains. I was moving from one apartment to the next. And we were moving late at night. It was in the dark. It was kind of a long drive. I just said, hey, spirit guides, like just help me get to this place, quickly as possible without getting pulled over by any kind of police or anything like that. And I just remember at least one or two of my spirit guides kind of popping in the cab with me in the U-Haul. I had a sense that they were there. I think we did actually pass a cop. But no, yeah, I didn't get pulled over or anything like that. So yeah, I'll definitely use them in kind of those type of situations for sure.
I used to think that you could only ask for like big things, like emergencies, and when you would tell us like, oh, you can do it for this and this, and I'd be like, what, really? Is that like allowed? That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. When I was taking kind of beginner classes and learning about spirit guides, that'd be one of the first things they would kind of talk about is, hey, just ask them to help you find a great parking spot, or, if you're late to the airport, to delay the plane or something like that, and just see what happens. So yeah, you can kind of have fun with it.
And it's fun to see when you're setting those intentions and asking for help and see like time after time that it actually works. Instead of being like coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah, your intention is very powerful. I remember when I started to get really into the lucid dreaming stuff, I just immediately set the intention, because before that, my dream recall wasn't that great at all. I was kind of the person where I would just go to sleep and wake up and don't remember much. So I just set the intention, hey, I want to remember my dreams. And literally that night, I started to remember more dreams. And that's where it just started. And just kind of remembering more and more dreams, a little bit more and more. So once you kind of boost your dream recall, then it becomes a lot easier to actually have a lucid dream. But yeah, your intention is very powerful.
Andrew, are you still studying mediumship, or are you? Because I
Yes.
thought I remember like you were taking some classes.
Yep. Yeah, still am. Yeah, and that's a wild ride. Yeah, so mediumship, that's a fun topic. I think what people don't realize with that is the first part of it is that it's just your ability to kind of move in and out of the body consciously. And that's the first part of it that I really enjoy. And that's kind of a little bit what you kind of went through with that inner dimensions training, is starting to step out consciously and explore these kind of different realms, if you will. So that's something that we definitely do.
You're talking about trance mediumship.
Trance mediumship.
Yes.
Yep.
So for people
Yes.
that don't know, because there's different types of mediumship, can you tell us a little bit about trance mediumship?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what we're learning in that training is to, first of all, it's learning to step out of the body consciously, and that process takes time, because you can start to kind of step out of your body and just kind of maybe get a little lost, or it's kind of unconscious. So kind of just taking the time to just, because I remember the first time in the training, I was starting to get out of the body, and there's a technique to do that where I was just spinning around the room that my body was in, and it felt like kind of like a drunk person, just like flying around, just no control. So just having kind of a better sense of control and kind of awareness, and that takes time for people. I know for myself at least. And then kind of getting to the point where you can kind of start to take a look at and interact with different spirits or beings or entities, whatever you want to call it, that you would like to work with, that maybe that you're in agreement with, or that you have affinity with, that you might have karma with, that you want to work through, or certain beings that have really great healing capabilities. And you can work with them if it looks good, and you can step away, you can invite this being in to a certain degree, and then you kind of just observe and direct and kind of watch this healing take place, not just for yourself, but also the person that you might be working with. And like that's what the training is all about. So a lot of people think with healing that it's just about the other person on the receiving side, but actually you also are receiving a healing at the same time, which is pretty cool.
So you're saying you're training yourself to consciously make the decision to step out of your body.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could sound scary for people that don't understand what this is. Can you tell us a little bit more about that so we don't scare people off?
Got it. Yeah. So yeah, think of it kind of in your day-to-day. Like, don't even forget about trance mediumship for a moment, in that context. So just think of it as in your day-to-day, how present are you really? How many times do you just kind of take a quick mental vacation, where just like, especially at work, when things are getting chaotic, and you might just take a moment and just kind of take a mental vacation. And you might be aware of that, you might not. But it happens many times throughout a day where you might not be fully present. Daydreaming, kind of just spacing out a little bit. You're stepping out of the body to some degree. So that happens in our day-to-day all the time. And then kind of going back to, we were talking about sleeping and lucid dreaming. When you're dreaming at night, to some degree, you're a little bit out of the body. So this is all kind of very normal. We do it all the time. We just tend to be not as aware or conscious of it. So with the trance mediumship training is you're learning to, okay, there's a certain tool and technique to get out of the body and start to become more conscious out of the body. And it's kind of wonderful once you kind of get your footing, so to speak, because it's very healing, to be able to kind of get out and free yourself up. And when you're kind of doing this certain technique, there's a lot of healing and kind of purging of limitations and just kind of unwanted energies you might kind of collect through your days. And you start to wake up more and more and have a better sense of awareness and control, to the point where you can stay out of the body. A lot of people, we get this fear that, I'm going to get out of my body, I'm going to get lost, I'm never going to be able to make my way back. And actually, it's kind of more difficult to actually stay out. It's, when you're actually learning this, you might step out and then slingshot right back to your physical body and go, oh, wait a second, I'm right back here. Why am I here? And then having to kind of pop all the way back out. So in my experience with students or just my own self, it's not so much more about, am I going to get lost out there? It's actually very easy to find your body. It really is.
It sounds very trippy, to be honest. This is the kind of thing, right? Like if you're doing drugs, you probably have like some experience like this, but we're talking like drug-free experience here, like
Yeah.
consciously, purposely, like going through steps to be able to do this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's different levels to it. I find it really fun and exciting. Yeah. And with this, there come initial fears, and that's totally normal. But yeah, usually when you step out of your body, like immediately, then you're kind of in this dimension that is very close to the physical and everything. It's kind of like a real time zone where you can kind of see your physical body and, the room you're in and all that. And if you wanted to, you could go fly around, through walls, and you can kind of look at a clock and go, oh, I see the time. And you could potentially come back and you could verify certain things when you're operating at that level. But a lot of people think that when you're stepping out of your body, you're going out there, when it's kind of the opposite. You're actually going in there. If we're looking at the physical, that's kind of the external, so to speak. So once you step out of your body, it's the journey inwards. So you're stepping kind of in a dimension a little bit more in. And the more you go inwards, you're also going upwards in vibration. And when we talk about the astral, we think it's like, this far out place over there. It's all here right now. It's just there's all these different levels, frequencies or vibrations that you can tap into. And in the beginning, it can take some time to navigate it, but you can actually do it pretty quick once you get comfortable and you have some certainty with it.
When you're talking about stepping out of your body, like, where do you go? Do you have a particular place that you go where you're kind of like in a waiting room, like a spiritual waiting room, or can you explain like where you go?
Like me personally, or just kind of people in general when they step out?
When you're practicing your trance mediumship, for example, like in your,
Yeah. So it's different every time. So, for the classes, certain classes we tend to stay close to the body, and that can be kind of difficult. Because again, there's this, when you're close to it, it's very easy to just kind of move right back into it. So you're kind of keeping a certain distance from the body, staying there, being aware, and that can be kind of challenging. It sounds simple, but it's actually kind of very challenging to be you're just in the room, kind of observing kind of behind and above you, your body. And that's a great place to be to practice, so that when you go to invite something in, you can see and kind of be aware of the whole process. So that if there's anything you maybe don't agree with or dislike, that you can kind of make an adjustment, but that you have this kind of perspective or point of view of the whole process of your body, of what might be coming in, the person that you're working on. You can see the whole show taking place, which is kind of an amazing thing. So there's certain classes where we're doing that, but then there's certain classes where we're getting much further from the body, and we're kind of sometimes stepping out of this lifetime altogether. And that's a whole other thing.
To do another podcast on that one.
Yeah. Yep.
So you said like you stay close in case something goes wrong, and then you can pop back in. What could go wrong?
Yeah, and I've never encountered that personally. It's just, if you're observing, bringing a being in, and just something doesn't look right to you, or you go, I don't think I really want to continue with this, that you can make the quick adjustment and go, okay, goodbye. And then maybe just decide I'm not going to do the healing, or let me go take a moment and go find another one to work with. But usually you can, and that's the fun thing with the first part of mediumship is kind of consciously stepping out of the body, and you can start to explore different realms and meet different beings. So you know where to find them and find ones that you really are excited to work with. You're not going to work with a being typically that you're not excited to work with, or that has some sort of healing capability that's going to be beneficial to you or the people that you're working with. You're working with beings that are kind of on a higher level usually. They have some sort of information that's useful. And so you'll know kind of when you interact with them, hey, this looks good or this doesn't. And you can make your choice right then and there. That's how I know. So usually I don't have to make an adjustment, but it's just good to be kind of in a space where you can observe the show, everything that's happening. Yeah.
Is it easy kind of taking back the control?
Yes. Yeah. It's just a quick adjustment, a quick technique. Yeah. It's not difficult at all. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, when it comes to mediumship, then there's this, the first fear is, oh my, if I go out of my body, am I going to get lost? And am I not going to be able to find my body? So there's some of those fears to work through. And then with mediumship, there's also like, am I going to get possessed, or am I going to just, get lost with that, and I can never take my body back? And you got to think of it with the technique that you're learning to get out of the body. You're raising kind of the body's vibration up to a very high level, so that usually you're only going to be working with beings that are on a kind of higher level that can kind of match that level. So if you're worried about, a particular lower level type being or something like that, it's just not going to be able to kind of get in on that when you're using this particular technique. So that's kind of the nice part of it.
I have a very challenging question for you.
Sure.
So just a heads up.
I appreciate it.
So we've had interviews with mediums that believe 100% that there is nothing but love on the other side.
Mm.
And so when we talked to them, they said, there's nothing to fear. There's nothing you need to protect yourself from. There's nothing to fear. They've never seen anything negative.
Mm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
I did tell you it was going to be a hard question. To be fair, it's a big question, because what you're talking about, beings and ghosts and lower level entities. So it kind of sounds scary.
Well, I mean, think of it this way. When you think of like ghosts, what's a ghost? Like, it's just a being that's stuck on a closer dimensional level to our physical level, and they're just stuck. Their consciousness might not be high enough where they can kind of move on to another level. So, there could be a soul, a human being that just has a lot of attachment to the physical realm and things on the earth, just physicality. And their consciousness might not be high enough for that. So when they die, they're just kind of stuck there. Or they might be stuck on some image in their mind about the most recent lifetime, and they could just be caught there. And then so people that have bodies like us are kind of going about our days, or visit a certain place, go on tour somewhere, visit a castle or some place wherever. I've been to Gettysburg, but yeah, and then you can become aware of them, especially if you have these abilities turned on. Then you might be, whoa, I can really feel, the presence of people here, or I can really hear, or I can actually see kind of their form, so to speak. So it's not I know it kind of, the movies will kind of make it this like kind of big scary thing. There's a recent movie that I really enjoyed to the very end. It was called Behind Your Eyes, which is a really cool TV series. I think it was on Netflix. And it was really awesome, because I was like, wow, they're bringing like lucid dreaming and out of body experiences to, the mainstream, but then they kind of ruined it at the end and brought in a lot of fear just around getting possessed and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, you guys, you kind of a little aired there a little bit. But kind of going back to it, yeah, so you could have so there doesn't have to be a lot of like fear around. It's just, a human being that's just kind of stuck. So wherever your consciousness is before, kind of right when you die, that's kind of where you reside, even after the body's gone. So, I mean, like in my journeys kind of out of the body, going to different levels, have I experienced anything like traumatic or like scary? I can't say that I have. I tend to move through the lower levels very quickly and just kind of work into the higher levels. That's kind of where my interest is. And that's kind of why I had that training, the inner dimensions of kind of working at these inner higher levels. Is it possible to run into different beings that could be kind of like a nuisance to you? Yeah. And, I know certain out-of-body explorers have talked about that, where they kind of run into these blockages where they run up against they have this battle with a particular being or beings. But if they keep going at it, they'll get to a point where they can kind of take back a sense of their seniority and power and move beyond that. So the experiences some people might have could be kind of intimidating or perceived to be kind of scary, but eventually they can kind of move beyond that. But I've never personally experienced that. In my meditations, kind of What I find actually more of a struggle or challenging is looking at memories. That's been more challenging than, you know, people talking about, is there something kind of scary on the other side? That hasn't been really my experience. It's been more the things where it's more challenging is in meditation, looking at tough memories from this life, or especially in past lives that I haven't fully resolved. That to me is the more challenging part, is confronting those things that I've really wanted to just push away and shove off. And all of the lower energies that are associated or related to those events, those memories, that's been the more difficult thing. And it's challenging, but kind of going back to the very beginning, very rewarding when you're able to kind of work through that. And what do you get to have when you work through that? More freedom. So
I know personally that was like the biggest thing for me when you were teaching me. I think the first 5 classes we had, all I did was cry. You must have been like, this girl's super emotional, but it was just so powerful.
yeah.
All I did was cry. I'm like, why do I keep doing these classes? But it's because it was so rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. I find, yeah, especially when you're able to work through a challenging memory, the more challenging is the bigger the reward. You're going to reclaim more of your creative power. You're going to have a little more freedom. And sometimes one particular memory that you're stuck in can limit one part of your life, multiple parts of your life. So sometimes it could be a little more scary navigating that stuff than, at least in my experience, than kind of journeying out of the body. For me, that's been kind of more of a breeze. The more challenging part for me is being more grounded and present here. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, it's easy to kind of go out there for the most part, but being here. And I think that's what we're here to do, is really get grounded and be more present here. That's what I would say with that.
Do you have any advice for like a newbie or someone that just wants to open up to their own gift and try it out, kind of?
Yeah, I would say find community. Not to say that you can't do this on your own, you absolutely can, but I would recommend community, whatever that looks like or means for that individual. When you start to get on your spiritual path, it can be very, very difficult because there's a lot of uncertainty. When you're growing and changing and these abilities are turning on, it's nice to have mentors and guidance and being surrounded by people that are going through similar things that you can share with. That's what I had and was really helpful, because there was times where I was going through it and it's a roller coaster ride, and it would have been a lot more difficult for me if I didn't have friends or classmates or teachers to help guide me through it, or just to talk about it with, because it can be difficult, you know, when you're working through this. So I think finding a community that resonates with you, that you trust, that it feels safe with, that's what I find is really helpful.
Have you ever had any experience with toxic spiritual communities, or have they been mostly positive?
You know, I know of people that had negative experiences. I can't speak from personal experience because, you know, I went to one school where I took many trainings and had, you know, a lot of different classmates, a lot of different teachers. Went to another school with a different teacher, and everything's been positive for me. I mean, of course, going through trainings, it's a roller coaster ride and it's challenging, but I haven't had any like toxic experiences necessarily with a school or teachers or my classmates. No, I've had really positive experiences. I know people have, it just hasn't been my experience.
Is there anything that you would have done differently on your spiritual journey? Like looking back, do you have any regrets, or has it all been good?
I would say more kindness, more compassion for others, and especially myself. I think it's easy to be kind of hard, you know, especially on yourself when you're kind of going through life in general. I think we all have a tendency to do that. You know, sometimes we have this idea that, you know, wherever we're at might not be good enough, or, you know, you have this notion that you want to be having certain things by a certain time and it's not kind of met. And so just kind of more kindness, more compassion, more patience, more acceptance with just, hey, I've come a long way from where I started, being okay with where I'm at and being grateful for what I have. Just more of those things, I think, was kind of what I would say.
I think there's a lot of humility, right, that we learn in this process.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like I've been humbled many times over and over and over. Yeah, especially kind of like where I'll get these, just being open and transparent. I'll get to these points where I go, oh yeah, I know a lot. I've learned a lot. Like, what else could I really learn or know? And then again, I get humbled real fast and realize, oh my gosh, there's just so much more to learn and to grow and to change and to heal from. And sometimes you don't want to admit that to yourself. And I know I have that sometimes. And so you get humbled very fast on your spiritual path, unfortunately. But for the best, because then you're not kind of just stagnant. You can kind of move beyond that and continue growing and changing. And I love growing and changing. I love, and it's always going back to, what am I growing towards? What am I changing, or why am I changing? And that's what I like to remind myself of, to carry on. Because it is easy to go, kind of, when you're growing and changing, like you said, oh my God, why am I here? Or what am I doing? Or what's going on? It can be a lot. And it's meditation is, it's always reminding yourself. It's just constant reminding yourself of, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing this.
So what is the next step on your spiritual journey?
I'm enjoying, so we just started a podcast. I've done like multiple podcasts, whether it's by myself or with a friend in the past. And so right now I'm kind of doing it with my wife. So more of that. I'm enjoying that. It's been fun. It's just been nice kind of talking. It's a little different than teaching classes where there's kind of guiding. It's just more fun to just kind of be able to sit there and just speak on different topics. And I'm reminded after every episode or during episodes of like how many topics you could talk about and explore. So I'm finding that to be really fun and exciting. So I think a lot more of that is kind of the next step.
Do you have any favorite books, podcasts, YouTube channels as resources that you like to share?
I'd say the biggest book is the one I mentioned before, which is You Are the Answer by Michael Tamura. That's one of those books where you could read it multiple times. You read it once and maybe you have, a certain level of understanding of what you just read. So you could read it many, many times over, or you could just open the book and flip to a certain page and do it that way. Yeah, that book is really important to me because that's the book that I started my journey with and kind of woke up to. So that's the one I've been recommending throughout the years all the time to students, to just people, strangers. I'll just say, hey, check this book out. Yeah, that would be the book I recommend. Yeah, I think that's it. There's some podcasts that I'll listen to, but actually Michael Tamura, he actually recently passed, but him and his wife, I think they still have it going, but it's kind of running on encores or previous episodes. But they have a podcast, I think, Living the Miracle, which is pretty cool to listen to. Yeah, so that'd be the podcast and the book that I recommend.
Where can people find you and what do you offer?
Yeah, so in person, we're kind of lower downtown Denver. Online, you can check out the website, denverpsychicschool.com. We offer basic classes to meditation, to energy healing classes, to many different psychic trainings that range from 5 months to 2 years. And then our readings, energy healing, and then some energy checks. The energy checks are more for people that are in trainings or have completed trainings. That's the things that we offer. And right now I'm kind of mostly passionate about the teaching. So in the past, it's been more readings and healings. Right now it's more kind of about, instead of giving the readings and healings, it's about showing people that, oh, you can actually read yourself, or you can read other people, or you can heal yourself and heal other people. And that's what I really have an affinity for, is showing people that and watching them kind of grow and change with these pretty powerful tools.
I just need to say, like the first time in class, when I learned how to read and like acknowledge, like, wow, I can read somebody. That is one of my favorite moments in life so far. It was so like, wow, is this real kind of? Or yeah, amazing.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing experience just to, turn your clairvoyance on just in general and just go like, whoa, I'm seeing color or I see an image. Like that's a huge deal. But then yeah, kind of to sit in like a traditional R reading and just be able to read someone, kind of all their layers. It's a really amazing experience because it's like we're all mirrors. So you get to kind of see yourself in someone else. So it's kind of a healing for that person and yourself as well. But yeah, it is a really profound experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining our podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Vision Chat. You can find more about us at visionofprofoundhealing.com, where we offer readings, courses, and classes.